of man people admired. Always busy. Always traveling somewhere important. Always doing something. To the world, he was this charming, successful man who loved his wife. To me, he was a ghost who kissed my forehead out of habit and forgot my favorite flower every single birthday. I don't blame him, not completely. Life wears people down in quiet ways. But somewhere along the line, I stopped being his partner. I became a fixture in the apartment. Like a lamp he turned off when he was tired. Like a chair that was always there, whether he noticed it or not. And the apartment. It reflected all of that, even if I didn't want to admit it. Elegant. Polished floors that gleamed like a mirror. Tall ceilings that made your footsteps echo long after you'd gone. Big windows that let the light pour in, but never made the place feel warm. The hallways always smelled faintly of pine wood and cold marble. Beautiful. Empty. Like a painting no one admired anymore. It was in those hallways that I first noticed him. The neighbor. Early 40s, maybe. Confident in that quiet way that doesn't need to prove anything. Always in a crisp shirt, sleeves rolled just enough to hint at something unraveled underneath. We never really spoke much. Just polite hellos. Little nods. Small smiles that lasted a fraction longer than they should have. And his eyes. God, his eyes. He didn't look at me the way my husband did. He didn't glance past me like I was part of the scenery. When he looked at me, it was like he saw something I had almost forgotten was there. Not lust. Not desire. Recognition. Like he knew the ache I carried inside my chest. Like he carried his own version of it too. I told myself it was nothing. Just neighborly kindness. Just two lonely people brushing shoulders in a building full of closed doors and quiet dinners. But even back then, somewhere deep down, I think I knew. Some part of me whispered that one day. Those glances would mean something more. Something I wouldn't be able to take back. And still, every time I heard his footsteps behind me in the hallway, every time I caught his reflection in the elevator doors, I didn't walk faster. I didn't turn away. I slowed down. Just enough. Just enough to feel like I was still innocent. Just enough to lie to myself. Because when you're starving, even a glance can feel like a feast. It was just a normal day. One of those days that drags its feet, heavy and gray. Work had drained me. The kind of tired that seeps into your bones and makes even breathing feel like an effort. I had 2 grocery bags cutting into my hands. One of the handles snapped halfway across the lobby, but I didn't even flinch. Just gathered the bruised apples and broken eggs and kept walking. That's when I saw him, leaning casually against the wall near the elevator, scrolling through his phone. He looked up as I approached, and that familiar, easy smile crossed his face. The one that always seemed to reach his eyes. I smiled back. Because that's what you do, right? You smile. You pretend your heart isn't aching for something you can't even name. Rough day? He asked, voice low and warm, like he already knew the answer. Something like that, I managed to say, adjusting the bags in my arms. He reached out, fingertips brushing mine as he took one of the heavier ones without asking. Just a small gesture. Harmless. But something in me shifted. The elevator dinged. We both stepped inside. The doors slid shut with a soft sigh, sealing us in. The air felt different immediately. He stood close. Not too close, but close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his skin. Close enough that the space between us felt thinner somehow. We didn't talk. We didn't need to. The elevator began its slow climb. 1 floor, 2 floors. And then, without warning, a sharp jolt. The whole box shuddered. The lights flickered overhead. The floor seemed to lurch sideways for a heartbeat before settling into a dead, humming stillness. We both stumbled, instinctively reaching out. His hand brushed my elbow, steadying me. Too steady. Too gentle. I laughed nervously, a brittle sound that cracked in the silent air. Guess we're stuck, I said, trying to keep my voice light. He pressed the emergency button. Once. Twice. Nothing. He tried the intercom. Dead silence. We stood there, listening to the low mechanical hum beneath our feet, the faint buzz of dying lights overhead. And then, nothing. Just silence. Thick, heavy, pressing in from all sides. It wasn't the broken elevator that scared me. It wasn't the thought of being late for dinner or the groceries spoiling in my arms. It was the way his eyes didn't leave mine. The way he looked at me like he was seeing a version of me even I had forgotten. The version that laughed too loudly, cried too easily. The version that used to believe love was supposed to feel like something more than obligation. And in that tiny metal box, between 4 cold walls and a sky that felt 1,000,000 miles away, I remembered her too. I remembered what it felt like to be seen. Really seen. Not as a wife. Not as a hostess. Not as a well-dressed shadow hanging off someone's arm at dinner parties. Just me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't know if I was strong enough to look away. The lights flickered again, then steadied into a dim, humming glow. The elevator was still. Silent. Breathless. I bent down to gather the apples, my hands shaking more than they should have. He bent down too, our fingers brushing briefly over the same apple. A touch so light, so accidental, and yet it felt like a lightning bolt right through my chest. I mumbled a thank you, cradling the bruised fruit against my body like some ridiculous shield. He smiled, that same quiet, knowing smile, and then we were standing there. Trapped. Nowhere to go. Breathing the same thick air. I pressed the emergency button. No answer. Pressed it again. Still nothing. I tried to laugh it off, say something casual about maintenance being lazy or bad wiring, but the words felt thin. Empty. They floated in the air between us and fell flat at our feet. The elevator felt smaller by the second. The walls inching closer. The silence louder than the buzzing light overhead. I looked at him, and he was already looking at me. Not with hunger. Not with expectation. But with something worse. Recognition. Like he could see the cracks under my skin. The parts of me I kept hidden, even from myself. I tore my eyes away, stared hard at the numbers above the door, willing them to change. They didn't. And that's when the guilt started. Sharp. Immediate. Tearing into me without mercy. I have a husband. I'm married. I'm not this woman. So why? Why was I trembling? I tried to fill the silence again, asking him about work, about the weather, anything to shove the growing tension back into a box I could lock. But every word felt fake. Forced. Like I was talking through a wall of glass neither of us could pretend wasn't there. The memory of my husband flashed through my mind. Him, sitting on the couch, glued to his laptop, barely glancing up when I walked through the door. Him rolling over at night, his back to me, the space between us colder than the winter air outside. Him, forgetting my birthday 3 years in a row, making some half-hearted excuse about meetings and deadlines. I clutched the grocery bag tighter, trying to anchor myself to something, anything. It's just loneliness, I told myself. It's just human to want to be seen. It's just human to crave connection. It doesn't mean anything. But deep down, I knew I was lying. Not to him. Not even to my husband. I was lying to myself. Because something had shifted the moment the elevator jolted to a stop. Something deep. Something dangerous. They say the heart knows before the mind can argue. Mine was already halfway down a road I swore I would never walk. And still, I didn't back away. I stood there, breathing the same broken air. Feeling every inch of the empty space between us collapse into nothing at all. The minutes dragged on inside that elevator, stretching and pulling like something heavy and alive. I shifted my weight from one foot to the other, pretending to check my phone, pretending I wasn't aware of how close he was standing. Too close. Not close enough. I could feel the heat from his body, the steady rhythm of his breathing. The almost imperceptible way his arm would brush against mine when either of us moved even a little. A casual touch. Innocent enough to deny. Dangerous enough to remember. He said something about the maintenance team being useless, and I laughed. A real laugh this time, sharp, startled, cracking the tension just enough to breathe for a second. But the laugh stayed between us like a shared secret, like something far too intimate for two people who barely knew each other. And then, without thinking, I said it. 3 little words that spilled out of my mouth before I could catch them. I feel invisible. The words hung there, heavy, vulnerable, naked. I wanted to snatch them back, shove them into the pit of my stomach where all the other unsaid things lived. But it was too late. He didn't mock me. He didn't offer some awkward consolation. He just looked at me, and for a moment, his mask slipped. "I see you," he said. Soft, certain. And God help me, I believed him. There was a sadness in his eyes that mirrored my own, a kind of loneliness that recognized mine without needing an explanation. It felt like standing in front of a mirror after years of being invisible to everyone, including myself. He shifted closer. Not aggressively. Not demanding. Just closer. Slow enough that I could have stepped away. Should have stepped away. But I didn't. He reached out, hesitating for a fraction of a second, giving me every chance to pull away. And when I didn't, he let his hand rest lightly, so lightly on my shoulder. It was barely a touch. Featherlight. The kind of touch you could almost convince yourself didn't happen if you needed to. But it was real. I could feel the weight of it. The warmth. The terrifying gentleness. And somewhere deep inside, the panic started. Push him away. Scream. Run. Do something. Anything. But my body didn't move. It betrayed me. Or maybe it revealed me, showed the cracks I'd spent so long trying to patch with forced smiles and swallowed tears. I stood there, frozen, breathless, torn between guilt and hunger, shame and longing. And then I did something I promised myself I never would. I don't know who moved first. Maybe it was both of us. Maybe it was something bigger than us, something that had been building for months, years, lifetimes. All I know is, one moment we were standing there, drowning in the silence, and the next, his mouth was on mine. It wasn't wild. It wasn't desperate. It was slow, hesitant, like he was giving me every chance to pull away. Like he was asking without words, "Are you sure? Are you sure you want to remember this moment for the rest of your life?" And God help me. I kissed him back. I don't know how long we stood there, lost in that kiss. Long enough for the world to fall away. Long enough for the ache inside my chest, the one I'd been carrying around like a second skin, to crack wide open. It wasn't about him. It wasn't even about wanting another man. It was about being seen, being wanted, being touched like I mattered, being held like I wasn't invisible anymore. In that kiss, I didn't feel like a wife left behind. I didn't feel like an afterthought. I felt alive. I surrendered, not to him, but to the part of me that had been screaming in silence for years. The part of me that had been starving for something I couldn't even name. His hand cupped the side of my face, his thumb brushing the corner of my mouth like I was something fragile, something precious. And for a moment, I let myself believe I could stay there. In that tiny, stolen moment where nothing existed but breath and skin and the terrifying relief of being wanted. But life, cruel as it is, never lets you stay in those moments. The elevator jolted beneath our feet, a sudden violent shudder that broke the spell like a crack of thunder. The cold hum of the machinery roared back to life, filling the space with a mechanical buzz that felt louder than any scream. We stumbled apart, breathless, staring at each other, staring at what we had done. The warmth of his hands still burned on my skin. The taste of him still lingered on my lips, but the glow of connection, it curdled. Turned bitter the moment the lights fully came back and reality crashed in like a wave. I looked at him. He looked at me. And for the first time, there were no smiles. No easy excuses. Just the naked truth between us. The elevator doors slid open with a soft ding. But it was too late. The damage was already done. I didn't wait. I didn't think. The moment my feet hit the hallway floor, I ran. Grocery bags forgotten, keys clutched tight in my shaking hands, I fumbled with the lock until the door swung open. I slammed it shut behind me like I could shut out what had just happened. Leaning back against the cold wood, I let my body slide down to the floor, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Shame washed over me, thick and suffocating, sticking to my skin like a second layer. I pressed my palms against my face, willing myself to wake up, to undo it, to be someone else. But no matter how tightly I closed my eyes, the truth stayed. I had crossed a line. Not because I didn't love my husband, but because somewhere along the way, I had stopped loving the version of myself that stayed silent, invisible, forgotten. The next day, I avoided the elevator completely. Took the stairs, 2 at a time, even when my legs screamed in protest. I refused to risk seeing him. Refused to risk meeting those eyes that would remind me of everything I was trying to forget. Once, maybe twice, I heard a soft knock on the door. Short, almost hesitant. I froze each time, holding my breath, refusing to move. And when I finally dared to peek through the peephole, there was nothing but an empty hallway staring back at me. At home, I threw myself into the role of a good wife like a woman possessed. I made my husband's favorite dinners, laughed a little too loudly at his dry, distracted jokes, reached for his hand even when it hung limp in mine. I became more affectionate, more available, more desperate, and he barely noticed. He smiled when it was convenient, thanked me for the meals without ever looking up from his phone, told me he loved me as he turned out the light, the words flat, mechanical, worn out from overuse. And every night, when the house went quiet, when the walls pressed in and the silence screamed louder than anything else, I replayed it. The kiss. The way his hand had cupped my face so carefully, like I was something rare. The way the world had fallen away, leaving just the two of us, breathing the same broken air. I replayed the loneliness too. The way it had grown inside me like a vine, choking the life out of every part of me I had once loved. And worst of all, I replayed my own betrayal, not of my husband, but of the woman I thought I was. The woman who believed she was untouchable, unbreakable, above it all. She was gone now, and in her place was someone I barely recognized. I tried to bury it, tried to shove it into the corners of my mind, pile work and chores and force smiles on top of it until it disappeared. But secrets, like splinters, work their way to the surface, whether you want them to or not. I questioned myself endlessly. Was it the kiss I regretted? Or the fact that it ended? Was it the choice I hated? Or the reminder that for a few stolen seconds, I had felt more alive than I had in years? Every night, lying beside a man who barely noticed when my breathing hitched or my body stiffened under the covers, I asked myself the same brutal question. Was I a villain? Or just human? Because somewhere deep inside, beneath the shame, beneath the guilt, beneath the endless layers of what a wife should and shouldn't be, there was a sliver of me that didn't regret it at all. That terrified me more than anything. I thought about confessing, about laying it all out bare between us, about telling him everything, the kiss, the loneliness, the way another man's eyes had seen me when his had long ago stopped trying. But every time I opened my mouth to speak, I saw the fragile remnants of our marriage stretched thin between us. And I knew, one more crack and it would all shatter beyond repair. So instead, I quietly punished myself. No more taking the elevator. No more stolen glances when I passed him in the lobby. No more indulging in daydreams where someone reached for me first. Where someone chose me, not out of obligation, but out of want. I became invisible again. By choice this time, I told myself it was penance. That if I starved the hunger inside me long enough, it would eventually die. But the truth? It never really goes away. You just learn to live with the ache. And sometimes, Late at night, when the silence pressed so hard against my chest I thought it might break me, I wondered. Did I betray my husband in that elevator? Or had we already betrayed each other long before, in the moments we stopped seeing each other, stopped touching each other, stopped trying? Maybe the kiss was just a symptom, not the disease. Maybe the real betrayal wasn't in that one fleeting moment with a neighbor I barely knew. Maybe it was in the years of polite dinners, distracted conversations, cold goodnights. Maybe it was in the slow, silent unraveling